Hey everyone, and welcome back to What If Grad School Was Useful, actually, the podcast where I spend every week showing you not just that grad school is useful, but that your time in grad school can help you get the job of your dreams, or as I sometimes call it, your favorite Hope Corps professionalization podcast. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to do something a little bit different than what we've done before. We are going to go through the second to last chapter of this book, The Professor is In. If I bring it in from any other angle, you can't see it, so it has to slowly creep up from the bottom. The Professor is In, The Essential Guide to Turning Your PhD into a Job by Dr. Karen Kelsky. This book came out in 2015, but Dr. Karen had been running her website, The Professor is In, explaining to people the academic hiring process and selling workshops and services to help folks with their academic job applications for some time. By the time that this book came out, I heard recently that an updated version is going to be published. So maybe the chapter that we're looking at is going to be updated or expanded on. So this book is really for folks who are looking for that tenure track faculty job. That is what this book is focused on. However, that second to last chapter, she calls 100 plus skills that translate outside of the academy. And I kind of loosely remembered that this chapter was here, but I didn't remember using it much in my own career journey. So I went back and looked at it recently, and this is a good list of 100 plus skills. It's a good way to start to think about what skills you have gained in graduate school that could be relatable to other jobs. But at least in this iteration, they're not things that you can really put on a resume. So for instance, I had an example I wanted to share with you. I think it was example 40, curiosity, the compulsion to learn and ability to learn quickly. This is a very translatable skill, but it's a very rare employer for whom you can just put on your resume, I'm a curious person, and they'll think, got him, that's who we want. Now, of course, exceptions to all things, right? If the job ad that you're reading says we prize curiosity and we want curious people, feel free to put just that, right? Or some version of that. But for most folks, you're going to have to frame it a little bit differently on a resume. And one of the good things about resumes is that resumes actually follow a very defined format or formula in terms of how you list your skills. So before I go into the skills in this book and translating them into resume language, which is what we're going to do for the next 4 weeks, there's 4 sections. Dr. Kelsky breaks these skills into 4 sections. And so we'll talk about that in a second. And then over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to go through those 4 sections with you. And we'll talk about how we would translate those to a resume. Before we do that, though, I want to talk a little bit about standard resume formatting. So you will put your skills in kind of bullet points, often either under the job heading where you use those skills, or if you are doing, that's for a chronological resume, which I'd say is probably the most common type of resume, where you list your most recent job and work backwards, and under each job title are the skills that you used in that job. The other type of resume you can do is a functional resume, where you list a skill, and then you kind of elaborate on that skill in bullet points. So maybe the first skill that you list is project management, and then you would list you would break out all your separate project management skills, and then maybe another skill would be event planning, and so you would break down kind of all your event planning skills. And we will have a whole other episode closer to the new year about why you would be drawn to these different types of resumes, but in both versions, you're going to elaborate your skills in bullet points, and these bullet points are not concise or tidy. I think that's the original goal, but it's really common for them to be kind of run-on sentences. So don't worry too much about your writing at first. As with all things, let's kind of get it written, get it on the page, and we can edit it and tighten it up after that. But don't think that's just because it's a bullet point, it has to be under an arbitrary amount of words, like under 10 or under 5. Some of these bullet points can be fairly long. All right, so here is the formula these bullet points take. It is an action verb for your current job or your current role. That's going to be in the present tense. For past roles, it'll be in the past tense. So it's action verb, relevant task, the thing that you did, and then it's going to be either the outcome or the accomplishment. So you did a thing, and what was the result of that thing, or how did it help the company that you were working for? As a side note, I'm going to try and link this in the description of this episode, but the website The Muse at themuse.com maintains and updates a list of 184 resume verbs, and they group them by kind of the thing that you did. So did you lead a project? Did you make something more efficient? Did you lead people? And this is a really good source. I use this myself. I encourage all of my clients to use this. It really saves you both from falling into using the same like 4 resume verbs over and over and over again. So it kind of breaks it up. But also it helps, I think it helps add nuance to your resume. So for instance, in the example I'm looking at right now, action verbs for when you managed a team, there's a difference between cultivated versus directed versus enabled. And having those kind of spelled out for you so you can look at them and choose what best fits your skill or what best fits the job you're applying for based on their language is really helpful. So I love this list. They keep it really up to date and really maintained. Again, I'll try and link that in the description, but it is themuse.com, or you can just search 185 resume verbs. It'll come right up. So we're going to do a bunch of examples today. So we'll go over this formula several times, but the formula for these bullet points is going to be action verb, task, and the outcome or the accomplishment. Now, here's the one thing I want to say. A lot of times, graduate students and academics feel like if the outcome wasn't, I kind of want to joke and say statistically significant, but if it wasn't, parade worthy, if it wasn't huge, if it wasn't award winning, why even list it? But I think it's important to remember that for many jobs in the world, staying on budget and on time is a skill. It's, you would be amazed how many projects routinely go over budget or over time, right? So even just executing something effectively the way you said you would can be a skill. So it doesn't have to be earth-shattering results, just saying I brought the project in on time and on budget, or, the project went over budget and I successfully recruited additional funding from these stakeholders. Like, those are still accomplishments. Maybe they're not the most earth-shattering, but they are still relevant. So that's my kind of disclaimers on this formula. I should probably, let me know if you want me to do a whole separate episode on that with examples. But what we're going to do today is we're going to go into this book. We're going to go into the 100+ skills that translate, and we are going to try and translate those skills into resume language and resume bullet points. So I thought it would be fun to start with the very last category, which I think for a lot of us might feel like the hardest category. It's intangibles, extracurricular activities, and miscellaneous skills. Okay, so this starts with skill 83. Skill 83 is finding the humor in dire situations. So yeah, you probably don't want to say like dark sense of humor on a resume, or you don't want to just say like, hey, I can find the humor in dire situations. The way you might phrase that is kept morale up for the team when the project faced obstacles, resulting in whatever it resulted in, resulting in on-time completion, successfully kept morale of the team high in the face of unexpected obstacles, reducing turnover, right? So essentially making sure people don't quit or drop out. That's a skill a lot of us have from grad school, right? So, if you can find the humor in a dark situation, that is keeping morale up, that is decreasing turnover, that is increasing retention, which is, the other way of saying decreasing turnover. So those are some ways that we might put that on our resume. All right, 84. Making intelligent sounding comments when you have no idea what anyone is talking about. Or, in other words, the fine art of BS. So yeah, you probably don't want to put that you're a great bullshitter in your cover letter or in your resume. But what you might say is frames project in the language most readily understood by different stakeholders, right? So when you're talking to different people, you are able to get them to understand what you're talking about. I think that that's a part of making intelligent sounding comments. Pushes the project forward through incisive questions that help define targets. That is making intelligent sounding comments when you have no idea what anyone is talking about, because good questions are an art. Absolutely. I should go to my list of resume verbs to give you guys one of those. Action verbs for when you communicated. Counseled. Counseled is a good one. Counseled leadership on areas of uncertainty. Counseled leadership on communication inefficiencies, right? So basically, if you're confused and don't know what people are saying, if you can convey that without making your bosses upset and help them be clear, I think that's a great example of point 84. Edited, right? Edited language for whatever, for the deck, for the paper, for the project. Edited language to make it clearer and more concise, resulting in fewer customer service complaints or resulting in less time lost questioning directives, etc. So hopefully that gives you a sense of kind of like how we do this and that those make sense. Number 85, blogging, right? So writing for a general audience about a complicated subject. This one's pretty clear, certainly. And I don't think a lot of graduate students realize what a translatable skill blogging is. I know a lot of folks keep blogs as kind of like a stress outlet, or they write in popular publications. And so they essentially take their research or the research of their field and they communicate it for a general audience. This is a hugely underappreciated skill in the academy and is vital in non-academic settings. This is a huge leadership skill and can really set you apart. So, you might not say, had a personal blog for the 6 years of my PhD, but that might actually be a couple of skills, right? Like, okay, I'm going to pull another resume verb from this Muse article. Let's say presented industry-specific information at a general level to recruit new participants, to inform your mom of what you're doing, right? To convey the importance to a general audience, to let customers know why we're doing what we're doing, right? So anytime that you can inform a general audience of something, there is probably going to be a tangible, my words are really not working for me today. I probably need another cup of coffee. There's going to be a tangible benefit to that, right? So, and this one, this isn't too different from when we talk about like teaching the intro course and you are breaking down the information of your field for an audience that's unfamiliar with it, right? So you might even talk about this could even branch into, yes, you can blog or teach it for an intro audience, but you can also communicate it to an audience of professionals. And what that skill would be presented information to a wide range of audiences at different levels of familiarity with the industry or with whatever it is. The other skill that I think people overlook with blogging is that if you did run some kind of personal blog, you probably have some kind of website experience. And I think a lot of us are hesitant to say this coming out of grad school, if that wasn't somehow directly related to our research. But, you know, if you're looking at a job and one of the things that they want you to do is keep the newsletter going out regularly or update the company website, and it runs in a platform that you're familiar with or that is close to a platform you're familiar with, that can be a skill. You know, if you run a blog on Wix or WordPress or whatever for the average time to completion of a PhD in the US is 7 years. So for the 7 years of your PhD, then boom, you have almost a decade of experience in managing and editing a website. And I think one thing that gets graduate students nervous about this is we're so used to going it on our own a lot. That's like, I don't want to say I'm an expert in this because what if they have a problem that I can't solve? But one thing that I learned early on is if you are working for a company, even a relatively small company that has a professional website, they probably have an enterprise subscription to that platform, and that enterprise subscription comes with tech support, right? And so you don't have to be able to solve it all. You have to be able to identify what's going wrong and know when you need to ask another authority. So I know I kind of derailed myself on that, but that's a bugaboo of mine, is that a lot of graduate students and academics don't count their kind of voluntary experience in maintaining a website or a newsletter or an online audience as a real job skill, and it very, very much is. Similarly, number 86 is using social media effectively. I can't tell you how many grad students I know who use social media as an outlet, and it actually, they gain a pretty good following. I think my favorite example, there's some really good ones of this. The Science Lab podcast, their Instagram is fire. They have such good memes. PhD memes, another good one. Way back in the day, there were some really good academic Twitters that were run anonymously that had a huge following. But that is real experience with growing a social media following or sharing information or engaging the public or potential clients via social media, right? And so how would we put that in... let's see, in our resume language, we could do communicated, but I am actually going to do, if we go to verbs for when you supported customers, if we're assuming that a general audience is kind of analogous to a customer, right, we could say educated or informed, informed an audience about X topic via social media, resulting in a platform with a reach of whatever, you know? And, you know, if you don't have a significant reach because that's not something you were trying to get, but you do have experience using the platform, you don't have, you can even just say, I have, you know, over 5 years experience using Meta for business, or, you know, something like that, to let them know that you are there to help. Because again, you're not competing for a job with the world's top expert. You're competing with a job between you, who has 5 years experience, someone who has 3 years experience, and someone who has none, right? Excuse me. Okay, skill 88, adapting quickly to changing constituents' needs and remaining flexible. Excuse me. This is kind of similar to 89, which is working under pressure. So, you know, these are really important skills. You could kind of put those on your resume, less so working under pressure. But, you know, going back to what we said for the beginning, kept the team engaged, kept the project on track despite external setbacks, right? Kept the team focused despite either setbacks or technology problems or, kind of whatever it was. You're not going to say that two people on your committee got a divorce months before your final defense date and you had to learn how to navigate that. But able to work with and align strong personalities in a high pressure environment might be how we put that on our resume. Working under pressure, certainly the ability to maintain multiple deadlines and prioritize multiple projects. That's something every grad student is good at because we're always doing multiple projects, You might be doing your RA-ship as well as your dissertation research. You may be teaching, researching, and writing, right? You always have multiple, even if you're in coursework and you're juggling multiple courses and there are different assignments and deadlines. So working under pressure. And number 90, working without supervision. You can rely on good phrases like self-starter, able to juggle multiple projects, able to prioritize project deadlines according to stakeholder need, right? So who needs what when, one professor is always good to give an extension and another would rather die. That's stakeholder needs, right? All right, ability to invent or improve a get to know you activity. Yeah. So if you were the person that kind of forced your lab to be social, if you were on the Graduate Student Association or the Graduate Student Senate or some kind of socialization committee, or if you taught and had to get people to talk to each other, I wouldn't necessarily say improve a get to know you event. I might say something like coordinated a team building activity resulting in higher attendance or increased retention, or I had something that was on the tip of my tongue. Ability to invent or improve a get to know you activity. Gosh, it'll come back to me. I'm so sorry. Let's go to 92. Learning unwritten mores or cultural awareness. Able to adapt to cultural expectations of different stakeholders might be how you would put that on. Adapted communication for cultural preferences of different stakeholders. If you have traveled and presented internationally, you might put that on your resume as well. Of course, if you have foreign language experience, that will go under your kind of like list of skills unless it's directly relevant to the job, in which case you might say like fluent in Spanish with over 3 years professional Spanish at industry events, aka conferences. Software. So if you are fluent in a specific software, this kind of goes back to what I was saying with blogging. Like if you use a specific platform to blog, you're definitely going to put that under your list of kind of software that you're familiar with. But not just, if you use something to blog. I am a huge proponent of putting all the software there. So if you use Trello or Asana to keep track of your deadlines as a graduate student, then you have experience with project management software, right? If you use Blackboard or Canvas or Moodle, those are all different learning management systems. So you have LMS experience. There is a good chance that a lot of your university systems run on Oracle. Your payroll may run through Workday. So you probably have experience with more systems than you think. And so don't take a hard look at what your university uses to run things. I think a lot of times we kind of like skip over that because it's not very important to us. But when you are looking for jobs outside of the university, you know, saying that you are familiar with several different LMSs, learning management softwares, or that you have experience in Oracle, or that you're familiar with Workday, right? These are all really good things that you can list on your resume. Again, if you've used them to improve something, you can follow that formula of, you know, action, verb, thing you did, result. If you've just kind of used them and there's like not a lot to say about it, you know, like every university I have worked at has Oracle. So I have had to use Oracle a little bit for the past decade, right? So I have a decade worth of experience in Oracle. I'm not an Oracle expert, but I can certainly make do if I need to. Ability to strategize. Yeah, this is such a good one. The way that I would phrase this one is it kind of depends on what the job ad said. So how they talked about strategizing and what they're looking for in strategy. Again, this kind of goes back to juggling multiple projects at the same time, prioritizing tasks, meeting multiple deadlines, or working across teams, right? All of those are strategy tasks that you can put on your resume. Applying concepts to multiple scenarios, for sure. And here's the thing that I always talk to my clients about. A lot of corporations and nonprofits too love their acronyms. Love their acronyms. And they will put acronyms in the job ad saying like, you know, essential qualification, must be familiar with whatever acronym. And I have worked with so many grad students and academics who are like, I don't know what that is. This job must not be for me. And I'm like, well, hold up. Before we do that, let's Google it really quickly. And they'll Google it and they'll be like, oh, that's just a specialized acronym for a general process that I use all the time, right? So what was one that I was looking up recently? Oh, it was the waterfall system for project management. I saw this language in a job ad recently. And I was like, what does that mean? And I looked it up and I was like, oh, this is just my default organization, like how I have been doing things personally before I knew it had a name. You know, so applying concepts to multiple scenarios, you know, it might be, you might apply a waterfall project management framework to multiple projects, multiple teams to be more efficient, or to reduce errors or bottlenecks in the project process, or something like that. Ability to switch rapidly among different tasks. I think I kind of folded that in earlier. Understanding of quote unquote ordinary things that are related to your domain knowledge or discipline. So this is just kind of like, do you know the basics and do you know them deeply? And you probably do, right? This is another point where instead of relying on an outcome, you might rely on a time, like, you know, over 5 years of experience in this industry at progressive levels. So for instance, I did communication bachelor's, communication master's, and my PhD was interdisciplinary, but communication based. So, you know, in that case, I might say that I have 7 years of experience in communication theory and best practices at increasing levels every several years. Discussing current events intelligently. This one, I don't even know if we would put it on your resume unless it was very specifically related to what you were doing. So for instance, if you were looking at like an event planning job that had a social media component and you wanted to talk about how you can take advantage of trends for organic marketing, aka going viral, you might put that on there. You might, you know, if it is a policy or a research job that is affected, say, by changes in administration, or something like that, you might put that on your resume as, you know, ability to adapt to evolving state or federal guidelines. Maybe. I think that's what a lot of us are experiencing right now. But discussing current events intelligently is it is a job skill that translates, but it's less of a resume skill and more of a social capital skill that you would use in the workplace. So I wouldn't put it on your resume other than an example like those two that I gave. Okay, skill 100. I know we started at skill 80 or something, so we've only gone through like 20, but still a lot. Agitating for change or community organization. Yeah, so you probably don't want to put agitator on your resume because you're not a washing machine. But you might say that you organized, right? Organized your team to streamline a process. Or that you research the pros and cons of different software platforms to find which one best suited your company's needs and successfully convince your company to switch to that platform. These are the type of things that you probably have experience with, and also are really good, valuable skills and leadership skills for non-academic jobs, for jobs anywhere. Oh my God, this is the GOAT for academics. Skill 101, stretching a shoestring budget. I do not know a single academic that is not adept at this. And this can be a good one on resumes, especially if you are working, if it is a project that oversees a budget and they give you some numbers, you can put in that you've managed a budget of approximately this much. And how you manage to have, what kind of impact you have, especially if you have like a budget of $20,000, but you were able to use that budget for fundraising events and community events that brought in $100,000. Woohoo! If you were able to use social relationships and community relationships to expand that budget and make it go further, so again, I have done a lot of event planning, so I think of those examples. If you knew someone who gave you a space for free so that you could put more budget into food, right? But stretching a shoestring budget is so good. There's a lot of ways to talk about in that resume, but I think it's even more important to talk about in a cover letter, because a lot of people, when they're looking for good candidates, they are often... There's a fear on both ends. So there is a fear if you have a really healthy budget, that someone will spend it and waste it. So you want to show that you're responsible. And a good way of showing that is talking in your cover letter and using examples in your interview of how you were able to do really good things with a smaller budget. The other example is that people are often nervous that their budget is too small. So that $20,000 number that I came up with, that is from a previous job that I had where they were really nervous to tell me that was the budget because it was laughably small for an organization of that size. And so it was a challenge for them to get good candidates because many good candidates would take a look at that budget and be like, I can't do anything with this, right? And part of what set me apart is just like, I've worked with smaller budgets and done bigger things. Like, this is manageable. So while there are ways to put that on your resume, I think that that's a very good cover letter skill to kind of reference. Remember, take your cue from the employer on how specific to get with numbers. If they're specific, be specific back. If they are vague, be kind of vague back. And by vague, I mean, if you were on a graduate student association for your discipline and you got $2,000 from, say, the student senate to have events, and you managed to plan a symposium with that money that, say, served 100 people, right? Then when I say be vague, you would talk about how you used a small grant of $2,000. You might not even be that specific. You might just say of under $5,000 to create an event that impacted over 150 people or whatever it was. Efficiently learning about new major trends, 102. I kind of covered that, I think, when we talked about discussing current events and taking advantage of trends. 103, Future Foresight. She references Daniel Burris's book here, Flash Foresight. Bless you, Smokey Joe. My dog sneezed. But being able to see where things are headed, and make intelligent plans around that is definitely a skill. And something that you can put on your resume, especially in terms of, if you knew, let's say that your grant funding was running out. So you secured funding for another year of research. I think I kind of obliquely mentioned that before, but, secured further funding for a project that went longer than originally anticipated to maintain rigorous project standards. Something like that. Structured problem solving. That one you almost could put on a resume, just as it is. I'm a good structured problem solver. But here, you're going to want to talk about maybe your project management. This is another good one that's for an interview, because I have rarely been in an interview when I wasn't asked or didn't ask someone, tell me about a time when you ran into a problem and what did you do and what was the outcome. So this one, I don't know that I would necessarily try and put on your resume, but I would think about the answer to that question. What is a problem that you solved that made you look really good? Because it probably will come up in the interview. 104 is schmoozing and entertaining a crowd. Yeah, this isn't necessarily a resume skill. This is more of a fit skill. So something to practice for when you get to the interview, whether it be Zoom or in person, making people feel comfortable, making them feel like you belong there, like you're one of them. Engaging in, understanding, and talking about politics is 106. This really depends on where you work. So, for instance, where I work, this is very limited because we are funded by the federal government. So we don't talk politics at work, and we're kind of limited in what we can say on our own personal platforms as well, right? So this one is a very kind of know your crowd one. But if you are applying for a job, again, that has a policy, research, or activist bent, this can be hugely important. I applied for a lot of jobs because my dissertation looked at policy in 2 different areas of U.S. history. And so when I started applying for non-academic jobs, I looked at a lot of policy researcher positions. And so one of the things that I would say, without talking directly about politics, to give the fact that I understood it, is, over 5 years experience reading, comparing, and breaking down state and federal level policy in area. Organizing a workspace for maximum efficiency. Oh my God, grad students are good at this. Whether that be talking about, sharing an office while minimizing clashes among team members, or whether that be just increasing the efficiency of a space through something that you did. Those are 2 ways that you might put that on your resume. Excuse me. The next 2, 108 and 109, tolerating risk and uncertainty and finding the bright side or optimism. I think these kind of go all the way back to the skill we started with in this section, finding the humor in dire situations. These are really things about morale, right? So tolerating risk and uncertainty, 1, knowing your risk tolerance and what kind of uncertainty you can put up with will help you narrow down the field of what jobs you want to apply for. So that's not necessarily a resume skill, but that is a good skill for finding where you want to apply. And then tolerating risk and uncertainty and finding the bright side together, those are really great leadership skills for keeping up morale, certainly. And so talking about how you have, decreased turnover or improved retention, or just people have been more productive because you are a good leader and you keep morale high even when things are difficult. Those are things that we might put on your resume, or we might give a short example in your cover letter. All right, 110 and 111, willingness to go against the grain and appreciating the absurd and wondrous. These can be hard to put on a resume because not everybody, in fact, I would say that a lot of employers do not necessarily want someone who will go against the grain. even though it's good for them, even though it's a wonderful skill to have. So this can be another skill that you might not necessarily put on your resume, but can be a good litmus test for what kind of non-academic job you want. You know, do you want a job where you are empowered to make decisions and try things out and go against the grain? Or do you want a job that is very structured? And it's kind of, you know, there's a process for everything, and you go through the process and nobody goes against the grain, or very rarely. And of course, appreciating the absurd and wondrous is just a good skill to have as a human being. There's some really great research on how wonder, in particular, the sense of wonder, helps fight burnout. So you could there, again, talk about morale and productivity by, you know, maintaining a sense of appreciation among your team and a sense of purpose for what you're doing in your role. Okay, so I know I talked your ear off. I hope some of that made sense. You know, when you talk, you like say a certain word so much that it starts to lose meaning. That's what I feel like I've done with these skills. But today we went through the skills for intangibles, extracurricular activities, and miscellaneous. We talked about how you might apply some of those to your resume, or how you might apply some of those to your job search. And then at the very beginning of the day, we talked about resume formatting. And so, yeah, I do want to do another episode on resume formatting. Let me know in the comments if you think we should do 3 more weeks. Going through each of these sections is about 20 skills, or if that's too much, we can break them up and we can do an 8-week series and go through kind of 10 skills per episode and go into a little bit more depth on those. And if you have any questions about these skills or how they might apply to you, do feel free to drop a note in the comments, and I can answer your question either in the comments or, if you like, in the next podcast. Thanks so much. I hope this was useful. I cannot wait to see you in our next episode. Have a great day.